Hi, everyone. Um, very happy to be here today. I want to talk to you about a new post that was published on the datascientist.com as well as the Tesseract Academy blog. And for those of you who are watching the video, you can see this on my screen. For those of you listening to the podcast, there's a link attached to the podcast. And this post was about a recent project with the Tesseract Academy on predicting customer churn. So, customer churn is one of the most common problems in the industry, and customer churn is a problem that can be solved through the use of machine learning. It's actually a very common problem that's encountered in practice, and there are actually some very good solutions out there. Also, depending on the industry, on the type of data, the quality of the data, etc. So what we did is we published some of our findings, like a high-level overview on the Tesseract blog, and then on the Data Scientist blog, I shared some of the, let's say, more technical challenges that we faced while we're trying to solve this problem. So on the Data Scientist blog, I specifically talk about the two types of methods that can be used in order to solve customer churn. Um, so if you're interested in trying to solve this for yourself, that's definitely the post that you should focus on. Whereas on the Tesseract blog, we focus more on the impact this had on the business. So now that aside, I just wanted to provide a brief overview of the article and share some of my thoughts on that problem. I'll try to keep things not very technical, so those people in the audience who are not data scientists will still find this interesting. And the first thing I'd like to state is that when approaching customer churn, there are two main families of models that someone can use. You can either use traditional supervised learning or you can use survival analysis. So, survival analysis is something that is mentioned in this blog. And it's like a special case of supervised learning which combines regression with classification. So, what is special about survival analysis is that it allows us to use what we call censored data. So, censored data is data which we have observed over a certain period of time, but there are observations falling outside this period of time, which we don't have access to. Okay, so that's very common, for example, in medicine, in health related studies. So maybe we want to try out a new pharmaceutical drug and we're tracking certain individuals or subjects for a given period of time, and we see what effects this drug had on them. And then the study stops, so we can no longer observe them. Okay. So the thing is that we have information about them up to a point in time, but not after that. Yeah. Sometimes, which is less frequent, we might actually we might not be able to access information before that, which in most cases it's not as relevant, but that's also a form of censoring. Okay. So what survival analysis allows us to do, it allows us to use as much data as we have while at the same time taking censoring into account. And one of the most important figures in survival analysis is Sir David Cox, who died in, if I'm not mistaken, in January or February 2022. And he was one of the greatest statisticians of all time. He created the Cox proportional hazards model, plus many other statistical models. But within the context of survival modeling, this is maybe the single most important statistical model in survival analysis. So survival analysis, survival modeling for a long time, it has been the domain of statistics, primarily health-related studies, because it allows us to deal with censored cases, as I mentioned, and it can tell us relative risk. So, for example, if you ever read or heard about studies like, oh, the smokers, they live on average, fewer years and this and that, quite often this has been done through the use of survival analysis. However, in the last 10 years or so, there have been adaptations of these methods to machine learning. So there are methods like survival forests and gradient boosted survival analysis, which work very well. Okay, so in terms of predictive capability, they're better than other statistical methods. And one of the challenges of survival analysis is how you evaluate models. I don't want to go too far into that on this episode because it's a bit of a technical um, point. If anyone wants to learn more about this, they can always just reach out to me directly through my blog, thedatascientist.com. Just use the chatbot or the contact form. I will be more than happy to answer any questions which you might have. And then another class of methods that someone can just use in order to solve this type of problem is traditional supervised learning. Okay, where in traditional supervised learning you have access to all the methods like support vector machines, random forests, etc., in order to solve. In order to predict whether someone would churn or not. Now, the problem between these two is that, the problem with this approach is that when you use survival modeling, you actually have access to the sensor data, which is you still have access to sensor data when you're doing supervised learning, but you're not really using the censored information as such. And this is really one of the problems with using supervised learning in this context. But that being said, supervised learning can often be more easy to interpret or easy to communicate. And so, if you're interested to learn more about this problem, just make sure to reach out to me, or if you're interested to hear more about survival modeling. While customer churn is a very well, let's say, a very well founded application of both machine learning, but also, um, not only of machine learning, but also of statistics. There are many other problems which you can solve with using survival modeling. And before we go, so I'm just trying to find the post on the Tesseract Academy. Okay, here it is about this the same topic. Where if you visit the Tesseract blog, again, there are more details for those of you who are only listening to the podcast and they're not watching my screen. There are more details in the description of this video where you can see more of the high-level details of this case study and how we went about solving this problem. So if you're an entrepreneur or decision maker and you really don't care too much about the technical aspects of survival modeling or predicting customer churn, then I think the TLDR is that yes, customer churn can be predicted. And one of the reasons that you'd like to do that, like to try and predict customer churn, is because it's usually cheaper to just keep the same customers instead of getting new ones. Okay. And depending on which industry you are, like I assume you're in consumer facing industry, if you want to do this, like insurance, retail, these sort of industries, it can be easier or more difficult to do. Like in our case, we worked with an insurance company, so we didn't have access to sensitive data. We had data relating to the policies, not so much demographics, but that was enough to actually get a very good performance on this task, which made us very, very happy. So yeah, that was it for today. I hope you found this informative, just like a very high level overview of customer churn and how it can be how you can predict this using AI. In the future, what we're planning to do is we're planning to extend this pipeline and also study interventions, see how interventions can help predict churn, this and that, and how they can help prevent churn as well, and also improve our estimation of who's going to churn or not based on how they respond to this intervention, which is obviously our end goal, right? Our end goal is to prevent churn. But yeah, that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at datascientist.com. Always happy to talk about data science, AI, or blockchain. And I hope to see you in some other of our videos or podcasts. So thank you and see you soon.